Thank you. Awesome. So we do have 6 panelists today, and I'll start introducing the first 3. So we have Isabella, the founder of Bleed the North, a youth-led nonprofit committed to ending period poverty and period stigma in Ontario, which launched March of 2020 and has since donated over 60,000 period products. Annie, a manager with E4C, a women's emergency accommodation center, which is a 24/7 housing-focused shelter for women and those identifying as women in the Edmonton's inner city. And we have Unique with Help a Girl Out. She is the founder of the organization that aims to help girls out of period poverty by providing them with essential menstrual supplies, educational workshops, and empowering campaigns. So without further ado, let's dive in. First up, we have Nicole, Annie, Isabella, Unique, and we will see our other panelists shortly. But let's show some excitement in the chat.
Awesome, thanks Ryan. Just really quickly, Mary, can you start pinning us? Awesome. As we move through this, thank you. Yeah, so welcome Unique, Isabella, and Annie. First of all, I just wanted to thank the 3 of you for sharing your time with us here today and obviously your experience, and I'm really excited for this conversation that we're about to have. So yeah, we'll just dive right in and get started. My name is Nicole. I'm one of the co-founders of Ruth, and my pronouns are she and her. My first question is about period advocacy and what really got you inspired into advocating for menstruators. I know for me and Enka, it was a little bit different because we kind of started our advocacy in the space when we started Hempact, or when we were at Hempact, and we had our own personal experiences with the problems being a menstruator, but we didn't know how big of an issue it was until we were in this space. So I'm curious to know what your story is and what inspired you. I will start with you, Annie, because I know E4C is a little bit different and you help so many people within your space. So I'm curious, what does period advocacy look like in E4C and what inspired you to be a part of that conversation within your organization?
Sure. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Awesome. So I think for me, it's about dignity and respect. I work with about 58 homeless women in the inner city of Edmonton, and there's nothing more humiliating than being a woman walking down the street, having her period, where it's on display for everybody in the public to see. And I don't think people really realize how big of an issue that is. It takes something super beautiful about a woman and being able to create a human and bring life into the world, and makes it very shameful and embarrassing for people. And I don't think that women deserve that by any means. There's a lot of things that people don't think about when working with a homeless population, and feminine hygiene products are something that you'll find women that will hoard them because they don't know how many they'll actually have, or if they do find them, they want really big ones because they have to ration them in some capacity. So, I mean, even there was a period of time where every bathroom, every washroom that you went into you had to buy them for a quarter, and people would break into them, and people's thought process was like, oh, people are breaking into them because they want money or they want to sell them. No, they just really need a feminine hygiene product. Like, people aren't standing on the corner selling a tampon for a quarter. Like, it's not a money maker. I think it's really important that women deserve dignity and respect, and they deserve, I feel that it's a right that women should have, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I actually volunteered for No Woman Without in 2019, I believe. And I was the one kind of dropping off the donations that we collected. And I did go to E4C. And one of the things that kind of was in common with all the organizations that I went to was how much lacking they were in period care products, because not a lot of people think about this when they're donating. And so, yeah, absolutely. Thanks for sharing that. How about for you, Isabella? You started Bleed the North in the beginning of the pandemic, and you're a student too. So that's kind of a little bit of an interesting story. Do you want to tell us kind of what inspired you to go into the space?
Absolutely. So I first got inspired to kind of take action about period poverty and period stigma when I learned about the statistic that 1 in 3 women under the age of 25 struggle to afford period products in Canada. Obviously, we know that not all women menstruate and not all menstruators are women, so that statistic isn't entirely accurate of the population that experiences period poverty and period stigma. But I recall learning about that, and then if everyone can kind of try and take themselves back to March of 2020, even though it's a scary thing to do, toilet paper was being stockpiled, other products were being stockpiled, and I just thought, if this was already such an issue in Canada, something that I didn't necessarily know about, how much worse would that be exacerbated by the impacts of the pandemic? And so at the time, it was supposed to be like a 2-week project that I would be doing until I went back to school. But obviously, we all know that wasn't necessarily the case, and the pandemic didn't necessarily stop period poverty or period stigma. We know that the conditions just got worse, and I felt compelled to action in that way. And a lot of other folks did, and that's kind of how Bleed the North was born.
Wow, that's really great. And obviously, Bleed the North has done so much, so it's really inspiring, and appreciate what you're doing there. How about for you, Yannick? Because I know Help a Girl Out is not just in Canada too. I know you mentioned in one of the videos that I've looked through. You're also helping out, or you're also giving out products in some parts of Africa and the Caribbean. What inspired you to do all that?
Yeah, so Help a Girl Out sort of started based on my own personal experience. In a way, I've always been advocating for periods ever since I started menstruating in Jamaica. So a lot of people know my story. It's kind of on blast out there on Google. But I grew up in Jamaica, very low income, not very unique. It's a very poor country. So a lot of people were in the same boat as me. And I've just been using many months newspaper, plastic, cardboard, whatever. A lot of the girls that in my class, they used to stay home, but my mom was just like, you need to go to school and get an education, because education is so important if you want to come out of poverty. So the reason why I'm so strongly for menstrual equity is because I know what it feels like to be that girl on the street walking with blood running down your legs. I know what it feels like to miss out on exams. It's such a touchy topic for me because I've experienced it so much. But then when I came to Canada, having come to this new country, one of the best countries to live in the world, better life, I was still experiencing period poverty because I was still low income. I was living with an older sister who could only pay the rent. And we all know how expensive rent is, So I came to Canada and it was happening to me here again. And it wasn't just me. It was still classmates, still friends, and a lot of people who were even going to work. They were working, but they didn't want to take the money that they earned and buy menstrual products and lack something like toilet paper or, you think deodorant is more important because if you go to work and you didn't have deodorant on, they'll smell you. So menstrual products, you kind of feel like, okay, well, I'll just use toilet paper. I'll just use toilet paper. So yeah, it was happening here in Canada as well. And I believe I was in high school at the time, and I just got fed up. I got upset. Got so mad, so ratchetly mad, which doesn't happen often, but it happened to me that day. And I told my friends, one day I'm going to do something about this because I'm so tired of this happening to people. And I actually didn't even remember that conversation. One of my friends just reminded me of it a couple years into Help a Girl Out. But anyway, last semester of high school, I registered Help a Girl Out, and we've been going since. So technically, we got registered in 2018 as a federal not-for-profit, but we've been operating since high school. And it's been great. We've helped so many people in so many different countries, and it's just awesome because I know what it feels like. And I wish somebody our organizations was there to help me when I was experiencing this. So, yeah.
Wow, your story is so inspiring, and yeah, I think a lot of people don't talk about this, and that's one of the reasons why we're doing this even. But even that like little story that you just shared, and what inspired you to, start your organization, I think like it's so valid. And yeah, like I don't know, like for me, my period story is also a little bit different because I grew up in the Philippines. And so I didn't even tell anyone about that I got my period because I was so ashamed about it. And so that's kind of my background and my story behind this and what's keeping me to push forward, because yeah, like these conversations need to happen and absolutely needs to change. Thank you for sharing your stories. So yeah, anyway, I'll get to our second question. Being in this space, obviously there are some struggles or some challenges, obviously, and like it's not something that people talk about on a daily. And so how have you built the confidence and the resiliency over the course of your advocacy within your organization, and maybe even outside of your organization, and talking about these topics? Let's start with you, Isabella.
Yeah, I think we can all kind of relate in that for some reason, people still think that this is a radical conversation, which absolutely blows my mind because it is the farthest from that. This is something that is entirely natural and has been something that we've been navigating forever. So we are not being radical when we're asking for change. And I think that is definitely something that we've had to navigate at Bleed the North in terms of a number of folks not really understanding where we're coming from, things like that. So in terms of remaining resilient and kind of, sticking with our mission, I think one thing that's really helped me is surrounding myself with folks that believe in me and believe in the cause. And that definitely is something that we try and foster within Bleed the North in particular. So we have almost 70 members who are working diligently across all of our teams to end period poverty and period stigma, whether it be through advocating for menstrual legislation or for changes to menstrual legislation, going into classrooms and educating young folks about different period products and what period poverty and period stigma are, or actually on the ground, donating period products to people who need them, driving products, talking with folks who we're serving. Just incredible force of all of the volunteers is something that keeps me personally inspired every single day. Menstrual inequity, and I think that is one of the incredible things of grassroots organizations and of community action, especially when it comes to young folks. Like Bleed the North is made up entirely of youth. We're all high schoolers and university students who kind of understand each other's struggles and are able to support one another while also hoping to follow through on our mission. And I think that it's the conversations that we have in the meetings and the bonds that we're able to create outside of that inspire us all to continue.
That's awesome. Yeah, how about for you, Unique?
The resilience. Oh my God. Apart from just the sheer amount of people whose stories I've heard in confidence and seen firsthand, that keeps me going, as well as, unlike Bleed the North is completely youth-based. We have a bunch of seniors. I think we have as young as 13 all the way to 75 on our team. And they're drivers, they're packers, they're sewers. So last year we did the reusables project. We have so many grandmas and aunts, and it's just really, really crazy and really, really great. But yeah, they keep me going. And honestly, sometimes it gets a little like rough, like knowing that a lot of people still believe period poverty isn't a thing. But as she said, just surround yourself with people who believe in your cause and remember your own experiences and don't let anybody invalidate that,
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's what keeps me going.
Yeah, I think that's really important. The fact that, yeah, like what you mentioned, not let anyone invalidate what you've experienced, and also surrounding yourself with people who do care about that as well. How about for you, Annie?
I think for me, confidence and resiliency has kind of been developed. I've worked in the social services sector for about 17 years. So I think for me, just throughout my career, it's really been a lot of my own self-reflection and self-growth in everything that I do. I really had to learn throughout my career, well, and even in my personal life, that sometimes people have that inkling inside of them that they know what's right, or they know what they believe in. And so really trusting that gut and trusting those belief systems, and advocating for what you know in your heart is right. I spend a lot of time at the shelter. Like, that's one of the big focuses that I work on with my staffing team. Like the other women said, surrounding myself with amazing people. The team that works there is phenomenal. I've never met a team of women more dedicated to supporting vulnerable people in my existence. And they spend so much time trying to get the women to see their value and their worth, and that they're worth more than, the trauma that they've had throughout their life, or the negative things that people have told them, or they deserve to have things in their life. So it's finding ways to make small wins, whether it's you got out of bed today and like, hey, maybe you made that phone call and maybe you're going to get a little bit extra income this month, and that can help you get a place or something like that. Like, just finding ways to validate who they are as people, because everybody has a story, right? And everybody's story is important, and everybody's story guides them and shapes them and molds them into who they are. And we can learn from those things. We can learn from those stories. And so for me, it's about just really, I spend a lot of time trying to teach other people to trust that little inkling inside of you. I can't tell you the number of times I've had conversations with homeless women where I'm like, you deserve more than this. And like, you need to see that you deserve more than that. And really advocating for that. And I think that's what makes a difference.
That's really good advice. Yeah. Well, all those things that you all mentioned are all really great. And yeah, like I think sometimes it does still also shock me, because we would go to like a news, for example, like someone would be interviewing us for something, and then they'd be like, oh yeah, like can't even bring that up in the workplace. And you should be bringing this up in the workplace. You should be talking about this. You should be talking about your period in any place or any environment that you can, because the more conversations we have about this, the more it's easier for everyone else who might not have the same voice as we do. Okay, Ryan has just told me that we have 5 minutes left, so I'll go to our last question. What advice would you give to someone who's maybe a student, or maybe starting their own career, or maybe want to start their own non-for-profit, or maybe just someone who wants to advocate for something for themselves or for others? What advice would you give to them on how to get started, or anything in between? Let's start with you, Unique.
How to get started? Well, you probably shouldn't get started the way I did. I Googled, guys. I was so passionate about this issue, and so frustrated with the way it was and the way society saw periods, that I literally said, I'm gonna Google how to start a nonprofit. And honestly, I Googled for like 2 days straight and just got the ball rolling. So I don't know if that's good advice. Definitely do your research. Help a Girl Out has been heavy to carry. But yeah, if you're passionate about something, just go for it. Don't let nobody tell you can't do anything at any age, with whatever resources. Help a Girl Out is in my basement. Like, start anywhere.
Wow. Great advice. With great power comes great responsibility. So how about for you, Isabella?
Yeah, I want to echo everything that you said, Unique. Absolutely. I think starting with what you have, and I think a lot of people are concerned about resources in terms of, starting things when you're in school or you have other commitments. And I think that, in my mind, being a period advocate is not just what you see on your screen. It's talking about your period with your family members, not being afraid to pull out your tampon in class, things like that. Donating a tampon to people who need them, things like that. That is period advocacy. And so you can start with whatever you have, and participating in a webinar like this is an incredible start. One thing I would also say is, as young people, we are often told that we need to settle for the scraps of solutions that we are given in terms of when we're asking for change. And that is something that I have learned is not helpful. And I have vowed to stop doing, because it is so important that we have folks who stop settling and who start asking for more, because that is what resilience is, in my opinion. And it is that asking for more and demanding more from youth, especially, that change is enacted.
Yeah, I agree. Amen to all you said. How about for you, Annie?
I think for me, it's seeing every person as worthy of whatever you might be advocating for, worthy of love, healthy, happy relationships, support, and that everybody has a story, regardless of what they look like. And so just because you fit in a box over here and, you know, people over here have this, doesn't mean people over here aren't worthy of that. And in terms of like starting a business and things like that, learn from your setbacks. Don't take your setbacks as failures. Don't take your setbacks as faults. Take them as growth opportunities. Take them as experiences to learn and change and evolve and become better. If you can have that own self-awareness inside of you, you can succeed. And if at the end of the day, you look in the mirror and you're happy with the decisions you make and you're happy with who you are, then that's what matters most.
I agree with that, the whole failure thing. I think failure is viewed in such a negative way, but really, like, you learn from it. So it's not really a failure, you know?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that is all the time we have for this set of panelists. This was a really great conversation. I feel like we could go on for a whole other hour talking about this, but thank you again for sharing your knowledge, your experience, and your stories. We really, really appreciate it. Okay, over to you, Ryan, to introduce our next panelists.
Yes, awesome. Thank you so much, panel A. I'm just going to share my screen here. There we go. And up next, we do have panel B. So starting off with Erin, she's the founder of Empower Coaching, Hippie meets Boss Babe, here to empower you to be the most confident and fully expressed woman that you can be. Erin combines her training in Reiki, human design, yoga, and the energy space to put together her own female empowerment curriculum. And we have Akanksha, a PR specialist at Carleton. She is passionate about strategic communications, public relations, and political management. And last but certainly not least, we have Alexandra, founder of Sarah Jessa. She is a young female entrepreneur. There she is, just popped up on my screen. Her company combines activism, tea, feminism in one perfect and impactful blend. So let's give them a warm welcome in the chat for panel B, which will be hosted by Anka. And yeah, can't wait to hear what you guys have to say.
All right, so I'm super excited to dive deep into each of your journeys. And to start off, this is going to be for you, Akanksha. We're just going to start off with a question of, for yourself, what got you interested in starting your current career path? Can you tell us about how you started?
So I feel like I have a pretty non-traditional pathway of getting into politics, because I actually started at the University of Alberta in engineering first semester. But I think I've always been interested in the idea of communications. And so while I was sort of dealing with the summer of grade 12 going into university, I realized I really want to make a difference and see change. And I realized that was not going to be happening if I was building physical bridges. I wanted to build people bridges. So I figured I may as well just start taking poli-sci classes while being in my engineering degree. And I think that was the big reason that I started to meet people that were like-minded. And I found that I was really curious about people. And I was like, how do I keep doing this? And how do I make a career path out of this? And then I unfortunately came across politics. And I think that it's really exciting to be able to work with people and talk with them about things that they really care about. And I think that words are so powerful. I really loved what Isabella said on the last panel about, the work of period advocacy is not radical. And I loved hearing that, because it's it's not, and our words mean a lot, and our words are really powerful, and stringing together those words in order to be able to create a story to understand how you can influence people is is really powerful. And I wanted to do the political sphere of it because I wanted to make sure that people weren't using, words against like the wrong issues, or we're using words like for people's benefit. So I think that, while I always sort of had this like inkling and passion for like, communications, and I always loved talking as a kid, clearly. I think that it was like really, really exciting that I found this sort of pathway of a degree and got to make that into a job. And I think as much as my family did not want me to do it, they're obviously okay with it now, because they realize like you can find joy in like doing a career path that makes you happy and like, fuels your passion and like fuels that fire that you have inside.
Yeah. And to your point of how powerful words are, like, I think what you've shown throughout our interactions of when you were the student SU president at the U of A, it's so powerful. What the work that you began there is still continuing on to this day, years later, when you started that conversation about making menstrual products accessible on campus. Now there are dispensers on campus. So amazing start there. And it's so cool to hear that you have this interdisciplinary journey to where you are today. How about for you, Alexandra? What got you interested in starting the business that you are currently in?
So I didn't want to have a business for a long time. This was an activist tea project. It started in an Indigenous studies class as a way to raise awareness for missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls. As part of our final project for a class taught by Dr. Renee Watchman, she challenged us to bring resistance into our everyday experience. And we learned about the missing and murdered Indigenous women, girls, and Two-Spirit people crisis in Canada. And I just kept thinking that it reminded me a lot of the violence towards Indo-Caribbean women from my own community. I'm mixed race. My dad is from Drumheller, and my mom is from the Caribbean and from England. And so I was like really drawn to this idea that there are lots of similarities, but I wasn't sure how to make it into like a project. And then I was at Good Earth and I looked down at their teas and I was like, every single culture has tea. And almost every single culture has violence towards women and girls. And what could happen if there was a tea that used local ingredients as well as international ingredients and built blends that were around solidarity and bringing people together to have conversations, like a slower conversation about these issues in community. And that is how the tea started. And then I didn't want to have a business, fought it for a long time, and then just realized that it actually was a business and that there's such power in using business models to solve social problems. And there's so much potential there. For a long time, women have been excluded from business. And so I don't think, like, people talk about how bad capitalism is, but I don't really think we've seen the full potential of what it could be if all stakeholders were allowed to engage in it.
Wow. That was so powerful, Alexandra, because I think like every piece of that I personally resonated with, like just from the beginning of how when you said that you didn't really want to start a business, I feel that because I went into school thinking I wanted to do medicine and entrepreneurship felt way too risky. But similar to your journey, the opportunity in front of us seemed too big to pass up. And the problem seemed like it wasn't being solved properly right now. So it felt like there was a need to just go forth and try to build a solution. So really resonate with you there. And I think I won't taint too much of your nuggets of wisdom, but I'll move over to you, Erin. What got you interested in starting the career that you're in right now?
Yes. So hello, everybody. I'm so happy to be here and hear all of these voices already. I've got shivers. So thank you. I started my career going into school to be a school teacher, and I really quickly learned that I really didn't like this traditional school system. I didn't feel empowered in it myself. And when I went to do my first placement, I didn't feel empowered to teach the way I wanted to teach and teach kids what I wanted to teach kids. So I ended up becoming a yoga teacher at 19, 20. And there was no looking back. So it kind of took me into that holistic health path. Now, I took a left turn when I had to start taking my health more seriously, I was getting burnt out over and over and over again before the age of 22. And I wasn't getting my regular cycle and all of this. And I was diagnosed with PCOS. And PCOS is polycystic ovarian syndrome. And it is really, really common in women. And the more I learned about women in business and women in their cycles, I just realized how much we are not educated on our own bodies. On our own bodies with all of these 4 phases of business, like we aren't supposed to work on our menstrual week because our bodies are already working really hard. So when I started to learn these things, I kind of like a few of the other panelists on the other one, I got freaking frustrated. I was like, why is there not this education available to women? And I wanted to start a podcast. So I sat on Google and I was like, podcast, and I did the exact same thing. And I was like, I need to get my voice out there. And I've been talking kind of like you, like since I was little, like I could talk before I could walk. And this is what I'm here for, is to help women feel empowered in their bodies in whichever phase of the journey they're on, wherever they are, and really help them understand that you don't need to do business like a man. And I'm not saying that business like a man is wrong, but we're women, so we can do it differently. And we can really honor our bodies. And there's actually a lot more wisdom in our bodies. And as soon as I started to sync up my business with my body, I'm like, whoa, there's something to this. And that's what really stuck for me. And that's what I'm doing now, is really helping women tap into their bodies wherever they're at on their body acceptance journey, because the world around us wasn't very kind to us and didn't help us feel really good in our different bodies. So that's kind of what got me in it. And I'm extremely passionate about it because I felt really disempowered growing up. So I'm here to help women feel empowered.
Yeah. And I think we can feel and hear that
I'm like,
passion coming.
my Gemini, it's my Gemini.
And this ties in really well to the next question. So I'm going to turn it back to you, Erin, because we can hear this as you speak. How have you built your confidence over the course of your career?
Really great questions. For a long time, it looked like I was confident, but on the inside, I wasn't. So it took a lot of time sitting with myself, to be really honest, sitting with myself and seeing my story and accepting my story and seeing my shame and my guilt around where I had moved through, my guilt around my cycle, and really like tapping into communities that helped me feel empowered. A lot of practice, a lot of showing up, and a lot of realigning what's around me. And that sometimes looked like letting people go and places go and things go, and making the hard, like put your big girl pants on decisions to be like, hey, you know what? This person really doesn't make me feel good. And really tapping into me and being like, okay, it's time to go hard left, because it just wasn't feeling good. So it just practice standing in your confidence, practice listening to your voice, and those little whispers Annie was talking about. Like, that's what I teach women to listen to. It's those little whispers that are telling you to go left when you've been going right, or those wild ideas that are like, no one could do that. Well, that idea came to you for a reason. That idea landed in your lap for a reason. So just the practice of the listening, tapping into your heart and tapping into your body and listening. Practice until it becomes who you are.
Yeah. I think what you're sharing, it sounds like a healthier take on like fake it till you make it, because I think that's a little bit of the advice that I've heard. Found some truth in it, but I like your perspective. How about for you, Akanksha? How have you built that confidence over the course of your career?
I think it's fair to say, like, I'm genuinely still every day, like, working on this. And I think that that's like, there's nothing wrong with that, in my opinion. I remember I was like, when I was younger, I was thinking once I'm 23, 24, like I'm established, I have to have things figured out. Like, absolutely not. I'm turning 25, like in like 10 days here. And I like still feel like there's days where I wake up and I just like don't feel confident. But I think like Erin said it so well, like, I think it is so important to just like sit with yourself and like acknowledge that about yourself and like continue to be like, I'm still like worth it. I'm still like good enough to keep going. And I think like that is the hardest part about like trying to grow in your confidence. Is like literally nobody can do that for you. Like you're the only person that can like do that. And I think what's really important that I've learned over time is it's important to like know what your strengths are and not be apologetic about it, and not like publicly apologetic. Like, you know, when someone's like, oh, you're really good at that. And you're like, oh yeah, like, sorry, I just like really love, you know, X thing. Like you have to like not apologize to yourself for being good at something and for being confident in something, or, you know, for knowing your strength in something. Like, you know, your internal voice is probably like just like festering those thoughts. And I think that manifests itself through like energy. I honestly feel that. Like, I think people can just like tell the vibe. And I know that's like, you know, such a funny thing to say, but I also think like you need to shift your mindset sometimes when it comes to building resiliency. Like, you don't need to get kicked down a million times to be resilient. Like, you can just like choose to like take the next leap of faith. And I think a really clear example I'll give, I think, is feedback in the workplace. I think a lot of people view feedback as like frightening, like performance reviews. They're like, oh my God, I'm so nervous. My performance review is coming up. And I'm like, you should be so excited that somebody cares enough about you to like spend the time to be like, this is where the areas I want you to grow in. And I took feedback very seriously when I was, you know, working at the Students Union as a VP. But when I became president, I actually made it like a monthly thing that we did. We just sat down together and we just gave each other feedback in a very casual yet like formalized setting. And I think a lot of the people I worked with that year understood that like I give them feedback and I receive their feedback because like I'm willing to like listen to them, and I know and I want to believe they have their best interests in mind for me and for them. But then it also goes back to like sometimes people give you feedback you don't want, and you know that about yourself. And I think that's why it's so important to like sit with yourself and know yourself, because sometimes people might tell you, and I got this a lot, like I'm too passionate or I'm too emotional was like the number one piece of feedback I got, because I'm a crier. And it's like people will tell me something sad and I'll cry. I just like can't help that. And I used to think that was a negative quality about myself, but it's just not. Like, I have emotions, I have feelings, I feel things very deeply, and I'm okay with that now. So I think that's because like I've spent the time like not being apologetic about it. And I think like I would encourage people to just like really try to shift their mindset, and like what your internal voice is doing, like that does come out in your everyday work, which is like why I connected so well with what you said, Erin. Like, really agree with it.
Mhm. Wow. Akanksha, and I think your passion is almost like your superpower. It's something that makes you more special and makes your work more meaningful because you're doing something that you really care about, and it shows. So love what you said. Alexandra, for you, how have you built confidence over the course of your career?
Akanksha, I think that what you just said was just so magic. Like, there's so much to that. And also to the fact that like, you don't have to take every bit of feedback you get, right? You sift through and decide, well, like, I'm not going to change that I'm a crier because I love that about myself, and things like that. I agree 100%. Seeking out feedback is like the best way of becoming resilient. And that doesn't mean you should take like belittling or abuse ever. But it does mean like seeking safe people to get honest feedback from. Something that has been really, really important to me is like developing different kind of mindsets and techniques. I think as women, we are often bombarded with workshops on like change your mindset, how to start a business 101, but none of them really go below the surface on like actual techniques you can use to cultivate a better mindset on the daily, or like change your behaviors that you've been socialized under. I was really lucky in that I did a program at the Trico Foundation, and I received like ongoing coaching from the executive director there. And it helped me change the way that I was moving through spaces and built my capacity to make the most of my own opportunities, as well as like work through any challenges I had on my own. I think that that's really important because there's always going to be business 101 workshops or like mindset 101 workshops, but finding the techniques that work for you that then become like your tools in your toolbox that you will consistently use to make the most of situations really helps cultivate that resiliency, but also confidence in your own decision-making skills and your own kind of way of figuring out how to get from A to B. Because realistically, like all of our decisions, all of our little nudges of intuition are based off of mental models. And if we are only exposed to the mental models we've been socialized to have, it really hampers our decision making. So yeah.
Oh, I think that's very cool. And it makes me really curious. What is like one sort of daily or weekly routine thing that you do, like something that you've learned as part of your toolkit right now?
There's a great one at the foundation that's called affordable loss, that is like making decisions in a way that is safe, so that you can afford to be wrong, to fail, to have mistakes without it like taking out your whole organization or like your whole confidence or like any sort of thing like that. That has been one of the most helpful strategies for me. It's all of the curriculums available on the Trico website, but it really just made my life so much easier, because it allowed me to get comfortable with like, okay, I can make a mistake and I don't need to spiral into like full disaster of like what's going to happen, because I've already mapped out like the worst things that can happen, but also the best things, and like made sure I'm in between the safe zone.
Very cool. Yeah, it sounds like the analogy I have, I think just like being in the founder space is like when you make your cash flow projections and you have like the worst outcome and then the best possible outcome, and you can kind of land in the middle. But yeah, I like that. That's very cool. Our time is getting to like a little bit of a close. Let me just check with Ryan. Do we have time for one more round of questions?
Yeah, since we don't have many questions in the chat, go for it.
Okay, gotcha. So back to you, Erin. What advice would you give to women or people who are just trying to really advocate for themselves?
Get to know your flow. Get to know your flow. So when you're starting to really trust it inside of your body, get to know it, get to know the different products you can use, get to know if you like the ones you're already using, get to know your flow. Because when you are confident in your menstruating body, the confidence radiates out everywhere else. And a lot of us, it is that deep conditioning of you're not worthy because you're a menstruator. So we need to step out of that dialogue and that narrative to feel really good in our body. So really start to get to know your flow would be my biggest thing. And slow down. You'll get there. You'll like so get there step by step. Slow down would be my two pieces. Get to know your flow and slow down.
Very good advice. I think it's so countercultural, honestly, to slow down. I think it's a piece of advice that we don't hear very much, and even like the get to know your flow. For you, Akanksha, what advice would you give to people who are trying to advocate for themselves?
I really think that you are you can be your own best friend, or you can be your own worst enemy, I think. So really try to like spend time finding that like intrinsic motivation and what fuels it. Like it's really easy, I think, to learn any technical skill. Like if we're talking social media, like anyone can, with time, with research, with knowledge, like understand how to use Instagram. But I think that intrinsic passion that you have within yourself, like it's really hard to find that. And I think spending the time looking for that and, being able to remind yourself of that value is like really important. And this is like so cheesy. And I will take the frowns for it. But I remember when I was running for the Students Union, you have to create like a platform. And I remember at the same time when I was doing it for the Students Union, I was doing it for myself. And I was like, this is kind of silly, but I still use it to this day, where I've like created my own like mission, vision, values, platform points, like things I want to do, things like that fuel my passions. And like, I'm not super intense about them, but like I have it as one of my values to like spend time like smelling the roses every week, like once a week. I really try to just like do something for me, whether that's like going on a walk and getting a coffee, whether that's like going to the grocery store and like touching every piece of produce that they have there. Like just like you need to know what fuels you and what recharges you, because like this advocacy work is like not going to happen unless we step up together to like get it done, and encourage people around you to like find that intrinsic motivation in them, and make sure your cup is like full when you go and support them as well. And it's kind of silly advice, but I really think that it's so important to just like be in tune with yourself. And Erin said it too, like be in tune with your flow, like try to learn what that means for you and how that impacts your day to day.
Yeah, I don't think it's silly at all. Like I think the importance of rest and recovery, and knowing that that is something that I heard recently is like rest is not something you earn, it's something that you need. Because it's really hard to do anything like advocacy work or even advocating for yourself until you are fueled to do so. And that means like taking care of your body, taking care of your mental well-being, everything. So love that advice. And for you, Alexandra, what would you say is a piece of advice for people who are trying to advocate for themselves, or even starting their own business? If you have a sweet piece of wisdom there.
I think I've actually said this to you before, Anka, but I don't give advice. I don't think that I know anybody's business or their life well enough to like direct them on their journey. I hardly even know my own. But I can give you some observations from my experience that have been directly applicable to me. I've noticed that women in the industry, like CPG, often get like asked to lead like a bunch of workshops and like talk all the time about their experiences. And it's usually very general, and it's like creating a clog with the amount of time and resources they have. So what I did and like continue to do is I try and get really granular and specific with any challenge or problem or something that I need to know, and then seek out the dudes who know how to do whatever it is I'm trying to do really, really well, and then ask them questions. And I bring it back to my community and like other women, and just share via Slack or text, be like, this is what I thought I wanted to know about. This is what I think I found. Can you double check it with the women in my community, so that we're not kind of drawing on resources all of the time? Because just like I need to regulate myself, I need to make sure that I'm acting in reciprocity with the community and the women that are we're supporting, because like so many women who are in entrepreneurship are also doing advocacy, even if they don't realize that they're doing it, because they're creating space for other women. And that work is draining, and that work is hard, especially if you're not aware that you're doing it and taking those steps to make sure that you're caring for yourself. So it's our job to kind of look out for each other in that way and make sure that we're not like depleting the ecosystem.
Yeah. And in that vein, like I have to say, Alexandra, you do like an amazing job of being very tangible help to people. Like especially when you talk about Slack, like the Slack channel that you have for other CPG founders, like that is a gold mine in terms of actual value that you create for other people in the space by creating like a community where people can ask those very like strategic, specific questions of like, will this result in X, Y, Z for the business or not? And yeah, people sharing those resources in a way that is in like this community aspect. You live out your own observation. So I love that. And I thank you for that.
It's because it would have saved me like buying 10,000 boxes of the wrong size when I first started with things like that.
Yeah. And I mean, even being able to share like a story like that, you know, at least you have an audience that can actually understand the pain and struggle of like what that might be. So now we also want to open up the floor for any questions that the audience may have in the chat. If you have any, feel free to drop them right now. One thing that I'm kind of curious about as people are thinking of questions, maybe to start with for you, Erin, is what's been the most rewarding result or like example of your career or your business so far? If there's like a moment that you can share.
When the women I work with one-to-one make really, really big, brave decisions when we're working together. And that to me is amazing because I know I'm doing what I'm here to do. So in those moments where they come to me like, I left my job, or they're like, I moved cities, and like the big things that were really scary for them, and that they open their hearts and jump, that to me is just the most rewarding. And when I first started the work, I didn't get it yet because it's not me fixing them. They don't need fixing. At the beginning of my coaching career, I was like, do this and do this. And now I'm kind of a mentor. I'm kind of like when you go bowling and you put those things in the sides, I kind of like go this way. Here, just you can bounce off me. And they do it themselves. And that to me is just like the most beautiful thing ever. Keeps me going.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I see that we have some of our other panelists joining us back in. So I want to ask the same question. For you, Unique, what's been like a highlight moment in your advocacy work so far?
I'd love to say the Global Citizen Prize, but no. It was definitely last year when one of the projects that I have been sort of thinking of for years and years and years, but had no resources to execute it, and just like making different moves in faith for years and years and years, and have it like setback after setback, and then out of nowhere get it funded by Toronto Pearson. And we like, even after we got it funded, the fact that we set a goal of 5,000 to sew 5,000 pads, like in the back of my head, like it just kept nagging me, this is impossible, like you're not gonna make it. Like other people were just like, why didn't you just say 100? Why didn't you just say? And the fact that now we're in the distribution phase, it's my greatest achievement to date. Like I'm a scientist, I've graduated, and I don't even care about none of that. I just can't believe, I can't believe we pulled it off and we're distributing. So that would be my greatest achievement.
And that's like an awesome example of like, it takes a village to actually sew and now distribute 5,000 reusable pads, like crazy work, and like amazing work that you do. Yeah, to wrap us off or wrap it up, Annie, for you, what's been a highlight moment so far in your work?
In my work, I probably the last 2 years. Erin, you talked about people taking a big jump and a big leap. 2 years ago, I took a big jump and ended my 15-year career and went to run a women's shelter. All my experience has been in kids and families and very childlike. So it was a big passion project for me. We were able to secure some funding this year, so I'm really excited, and we're creating like a very different shelter that really doesn't exist anywhere in Alberta. So something super unique and super different. But for me, it's been that self-growth, like taking that jump and now being at a place where people believe in me in a capacity that I didn't ever believe in myself. And so knowing that there's tons of people who, when I'm sitting there going, you really think I can do this? They're like, no, we know you can do this. Like, you're the perfect person for this job. Like, this is, and I talk about my team because I'm not kidding when I say I've never met such an amazing group of women who get paid very little and do so much. But they're such a beautiful team of people, and they do so much for the vulnerable women in the inner city of Edmonton. And I'm just super excited for the future of the shelter and where it's going. And that's not a passion I've had in my job for a really long time. But my own self-growth in the last 2 years has been that trusting that inner light and knowing that, sometimes you're your biggest person who keeps you small. And so like, you can shine if you let yourself shine. You don't have to sit in that smallness. Has probably been the biggest piece for me. So I don't have my own business. I didn't. You're all very brave women. Entrepreneurship is not my thing. But yeah, that's probably my biggest thing for sure.
Yeah.
May I piggyback on that and just share a card quickly,
Sure.
if that's cool? I'm a little bit of a woo-woo person, and I'm going to share it.
Me too, Erin.
So,
it's great.
Yeah. Oh, you can't see the card, but it says sisterhood, and there's 3 women on it, different sizes, different everything. And the little write-up for it is, we are all sisters and reflect the divine in one another. And this was really a cool experience for me today to see all this beauty. So thank you for letting me share my woo-woo. So as we enliven the spirit of love and support for one another, the sacredness of sisterhood blooms all around us. No matter where we've come from, we're all sisters, reflecting a distinct radiance while holding one another during times of growth. Continue to be a loving mirror for the women in your life and keep learning how to elevate yourself and your sisters. Nurture this powerful era of the divine feminine and recognize the unique gifts we each carry, which we so saw today together. So we all long to be seen and valued, and we're feeling the call to commune and connect. Make space in your life for this unique bond to flourish. May we walk with trust and love. May we inspire and be inspired by our sisters, and may all women celebrate one another and the many shades of our shared cycles. So thank you. I just wanted to pop that in there for us.
Wow. I think there's no better way to close us off than those parting words. I definitely feel closer to all of you. Like, I don't know how other people feel in this chat, but I'm so glad we had the chance to hear the different sharings all of you had. So with that, I'm going to turn it over back to Ryan.
Yes, wow. I had chills so many different times from all of you, both panel A and panel B. It was so nice to hear your stories and insight and wisdom. It was amazing. So I'm just going to share my screen here. And before we get started on the networking portion of the event, I just wanted again to thank you, like all of our panelists. And I have put in any of the offers or initiatives that all of our panelists are doing in the chat as a document, so you can download that and check out their websites, all of that. And then also thank you to all of our attendees. This event wouldn't have happened without you, so thank you. And we do have a promo code here for you to save 20% off of the Ruth store, so you can give that a scan, and it's Ruth IWD20. I'll also put that in the chat as well. But it is only good for a week, so you can purchase before then. And lastly, we'd like to hear your thoughts from today, so I'll put a feedback survey in the chat as well. And then moving to our networking portion of the evening. It'll be very casual, so feel free to chat with anyone in our breakout rooms. And our thought starter, if you don't have one already in mind, is what's your key takeaway from the event today? So you can sit with that for a minute. We'll take a 2-minute break before heading into the networking portion as we assign everyone to the breakout rooms. Feel free to grab a snack or a drink, and we look forward to networking with you soon.